Comedians. I've got to work with a lot of great comics, and one thing that they all have in common is they're incredibly superstitious, especially when it comes to talking about why they're funny. And there's a great quote by an author, E.B. White, when he was asked why comedians are so reluctant to talk about why they're funny. And E.B. White said that analyzing comedy or trying to figure out why somebody is really funny is just like dissecting a frog. It's really messy, and the frog dies. So I have a little comedy frog that I would like to dissect for you. About a year ago to this very day, right here on this very stage, I got to watch one of the funniest improv shows ever. And not only was it really funny, but the 9 weeks of rehearsal that led up to that show changed the way I think about comedy and the way I actually teach comedy today. So back in the first week of September 2013, I got a call from the director of the theater here, Richard Mullen. And he asked me if I would be interested in running an improv comedy workshop for some of the students here at Cape Elizabeth High School. He said it'd be a 9-week workshop, and at the end of it, they would put on a show, and that would be their first show of that theater season. And I said yes. Number one, I really like working with teens, especially in improv comedy, because they love making stuff up on the spot. They're risk takers. They're very spontaneous. And the other reason I wanted to do it is because he told me that some of the kids that wanted to take the class were in the theater department, and they had been on stage before, and they had some improv experience. And some of the students that wanted to take the class had never been on stage before ever, had no performing experience whatsoever. And I thought that was great. And what I wanted to do was bring them all together and put them in one workshop, and then work exclusively on the most advanced improv games out there, the hardest ones to do, and just see where we would land at the end. So on the first rehearsal night, 16 students show up, and it's like awesome, 16 really excited students. And then we found out that we would not be able to rehearse here in the theater, that we'd have to work in the cafeteria for the first 8 weeks of rehearsal. And that was fine. They moved the salad bar over to one side and the juice machine over the other. But while we were moving everything, there was this really loud, grinding, electronic, annoying sound. And we finally tracked it down, and there was this bank of vending machines against the wall. Now, whoever invented the vending machine decided that they would put 2 motors inside it. One motor runs the vending machine, and the other motor just makes a loud, grinding sound. And we couldn't figure out how to unplug the vending machines. So for the first time ever in my directing career, I gave this note. For the next 8 weeks, we have to be louder than the vending machines. And then we went to work for 2 hours. We got up on our feet, we did some warm-up games, and we moved right into some advanced work. And it was really fun, and it was going really well. There was a lot of laughing, a lot of high-fiving. Oh, that was really awesome. And at the end of that first 2 hours, I felt like we had really accomplished something already. But I wouldn't be sure until the following week when I saw how many of them showed up again. Well, the following week, all 16 of them showed up. So we came up with a game plan that night, that every single rehearsal, we would get on our feet at least 3 new improv games every rehearsal. So by the time that we got to the end of the rehearsal process, we would have this really great menu of all these improv games and possibilities that we could do. Now, on that second night, that second rehearsal, the first game that we played that night is this great game, and it's called Interrogation. And it's a really fun game, but it is a really difficult game. And you can only have 3 performers in it at a time. So the first 3 get up there, and it goes okay. And then the next 3 go up, and it gets a little better. By the third time, it was going really well. So we ran that scene at least 5 times. And then I said, okay, has everybody been in this scene at least once? And they said yes. I said, great. Now we're going to move on to the next improv. And they went collectively, all together, no. And I said, what? And they said, we want to do it again. And I said, well, we've got 2 more improvs. We've got to get up on our feet tonight before we get out of here. And they said, no, please, we want to do it again. And what I realized is that if you're going to ask people to come into a room and work on really advanced improv games, and they've just done one, and it's gone really well, and they want to do it again, let them do it again. So that's what we did. For the entire night, we played that game over and over again. And every time we did it, it got better. And every time we did it, it got a lot funnier. And every time we did it, we actually found better ways to perform the game. And more importantly, every time we did that game, the lines got really blurred really quickly between who were the experienced ones in the room and who had never done anything before. And suddenly they were all coming together and acting as a team. Now, this idea of doing advanced improv really came back to bite me somewhere around week 5. Because we played this game, and it's just called movie style. And the way the game works is you ask for a really famous movie that everyone recognizes. And then you take a scene from that movie, and you put it in a location where that would never, ever take place. So the suggestion for the movie was Scarface. And the location, they wanted to put the scene in a mom and pop donut shop. So I got 4 performers up on stage, and come to find out, the person who ended up playing Scarface, he could do a dead-on impression of Al Pacino in the movie Scarface. On top of that, he knew every single line of dialogue from the movie Scarface. Now, if you've never seen the movie Scarface, every single line of dialogue in that movie has got some really questionable language. There's a lot of swearing, a lot of F-bombs. And the scene was really funny. And as soon as we were done, we sat down, somebody raised their hand and said, "Hey, are we going to be able to swear during the show?" And before I could say no, one of the other performers stood up and said, "Hey, hold on a second. You know, we're in rehearsal right now, and nobody knows what we're doing. But if we walk out onto that stage on performance night and we start swearing, and Jeff Shedd finds out, we will never be able to do improv ever again anywhere in the state of Maine." So they were really thinking long term, and they really wanted this thing to work. Now, somewhere around week 7, I came in early to set up the cafeteria, and I'm moving the salad bar. And a couple of the performers came in early. And this was a night I called the non-hostile takeover. Because they came up to me and they said, "Mr. Ferrell, we want to talk to you about the show." And I was like, "Look, we can't swear during the show." And they said, "No, that's not what we want to talk about. What we want to talk about is not having you host the show." See, earlier on, when I presented the idea of doing the show, I told them that I would be the MC for the show, and I would take all the suggestions to the audience, and I would explain to the audience how the scenes were going to work. That way, the performers could concentrate on performing and not have to worry about interacting with the audiences. Well, at this point, they felt very strongly that they wanted to do the entire show themselves, and they wanted to have that relationship with the audience of, interacting with them. So that night in rehearsal, we tried a couple times having them host, and they were excellent. So it made sense this program really came together. This little idea that I had, they took that idea and they made it their own idea, and then they made it an even bigger idea. So finally, last night at rehearsal, we got to move in here into the beautiful theater, and we had this stage and all this lighting. We were still kind of in cafeteria mode, because one of the first things somebody said was, "Are we over there by the salad bar, or do we move over by the juice machine?" But the one thing that really was clear is that all that weeks of rehearsal in there being louder than the vending machine really worked out, because all the performers could push their voices all the way to the back of the room. And we had a great dress rehearsal. And now normally what would happen at the end of the dress rehearsal, I would sit down and I would make the lineup for the show. And without even talking about it, we all just kind of came together as a group, and collectively, we all made the lineup together for the show. And we decided who would be the hosts for the show. And the next night was the show night. And I got here, and the performers were already in the dressing room warming up and getting ready. And they were going through the show and talking through each scene and who had to be where, and what the host had to do for each one of those scenes. And I kind of walked in, and they were just in a circle, and I said, "Hey, guys, have a good show." And they looked at me and said, "Yeah, enjoy the show." Because for the first time ever in a workshop, at the end of it, I got to sit in the audience and watch the show. And like I said, it really was an incredibly funny show. You had 16 improv comics up here, all working together, supporting each other, and having the time of their lives. And it was a great payoff for them and for me. But the best payoff happened today, this afternoon, because there were about 5 improvisers up here on the stage, and 4 of them were in that original group. And if I could just get them to come up here really quickly. Where are you guys at? Bam, bam, bam. So they formed their own improv company, and they've cut me out of the loop. They don't need me anymore. No, it's okay. That's the way comedy should be. So give these guys a round of applause.